Look how far we've come, all the things we've done. Did it all with love, beauty from the bottom up. All I want is you, you're my favorite view. But there's nothing more, girl, you make my heart beat.
And we are back,
Welcome back, lovelies.
doing something new. A
Yes.
To Be Better bonus cast.
Yeah,
It's been a while since we've done a bonus cast.
it has been.
Today is going to be something that I have been wanting to do for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yep. And I know that there's a lot of anxiousness happening right now, and there's a whole lot of, oh God, oh God, oh God. But I'm ready to run this motherfucker.
I'm ready for it too.
Yeah.
I have that nervousness in my tummy, but it's like I'm getting ready to get on a really exciting roller coaster.
Yeah. We did, for those of you who have not watched all of our content, we did an episode 2.5 years ago that's called I Apologize, This Is Difficult. I had a BPD episode the night before. I think it was probably the first time you ever actually saw me cry.
Yeah.
Had a very, very hard night that continued into the next morning when we recorded that content. There was tears. There was a whole lot of,
Releasing happening.
there was a lot.
Yeah.
And since then, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of healing. So I don't think I'm going to cry, but I am going to play. We are going to play that episode so that you guys can watch it. We are going to have a discussion about what was going on during that thing. And we are going to spill all the fucking tea. We are
About ourselves.
We are airing dirty laundry. That old moldy T-shirt and sticky
Yep.
sock is no longer mold and sticky. Like we're doing the laundry today.
We're scrubbing it with bleach.
Before we do that, I think it would be the right way to start this episode would be to preface it with the way that we met each other,
Okay.
because we've talked about it
We have.
and we've been. I mean, I think that was all early Patreon Zoom content or Vimeo. All right, guys, as you know, there was a TikTok scare. We lost the app for a whole 12 hours and we have no idea what the future of the app looks like. And with that, we are very concerned about the loss of our following. We have amassed almost 3 million followers across that platform with all 4 of our accounts. And we are trying to push people to other social media platforms so that in the event that anything happens on one app, we have multiple other backup plans. If you want to make sure that you're not missing any content, we highly recommend that you check out our Patreon.
On Patreon, we have multiple tiers to choose from. Starting at $10, you begin to receive exclusive content. At $15 a month, you get access to our private Discord server where we've amassed an absolutely amazing community of supportive people. And beyond that, we have other tiers to check out, along with my 2 private women's group, if that's something you may be interested in.
Guys, on our $15 and higher tier, you have access to live recordings. We record all of our content 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week, live in front of our Patreon audience, where they are able to chat with us while we're recording. They get to see all the flirting, the outtakes, the hot topic conversations that never actually make it on the podcast. And it's really worth that aspect in itself. We have an After Dark where we sit down usually once a week and have a glass of bourbon, or in Peach's case, a glass of wine and a bowl of cheese. And we have a whole lot of fun conversations, karaoke in the Discord. We finish the lyrics. We literally just hang out and you guys get to hang out with us. There is a host of other perks, including Zoom calls that are coming for the ultimate tier. So that if you guys are having problems, you can talk to us. It also gives you the heads up on private meet and greets, because when we travel, we try to meet up with people on our Discord on a regular basis. There's a whole slew of other perks that come through Patreon. I highly recommend that you check it out.
The best way to support what we are doing is to share the content. The second best way is to check out our Patreon. Thank you guys for being here.
Is that right, Vimeo? Isn't that the pay app?
Is that the pay app?
I don't know. Whatever it was. Vimeo, Venmo. Venmo is the pay app.
Okay.
Vimeo, you were right.
Okay, hell yeah.
Too
Had
close
me second
together.
guessing myself.
Yeah. But we lost all that shit.
Yeah.
So it's gone. So for those of you who don't know, when I met Peaches, my best friend at the time, there was 3 of us, me and 2 of my best friends. One of them was married and one of them was dating Peaches.
Yes.
And he brought her into the comic book store one day while I was there hanging out. Mm-hmm. And there was an attempt at an introduction and I was really fucking mean to you.
Yeah. I walked away from that experience going, I don't want to be in the same room with that guy again.
Yeah. I made a comment along the lines of, I don't need any new friends, or I don't need friends, or whatever. Yeah. Like I was really mean to you because you were my best friend's woman. There was no reason for me to be friends with you.
Yeah.
I was married. No reason for me to be friends with you.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of, 6-7 months, you were in the comic book store all the time. This was way after your previous marriage.
Yes. Years.
you had come in with a canvas and was doing some art stuff, and you were painting while hanging out with him on your day off. And I was at the studio or at the comic book store. And I am an art nerd. So when I see somebody doing something, if I can give them pointers or advice to try to make their art better, I typically do that. So I sat down and we started talking. And that's where the friendship initiated over art. Over the course of, another year? How long were you with him? Because that was at the original location of the comic book store.
I want to say about a year.
Okay, so it was less than a year then.
Maybe less than a year. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was a very short period of time.
We moved the entire comic book store to a new area that had a warehouse that was set up, that had multiple rooms in it so that people could play D&D and Magic the Gathering and like Commander Pods and Warhammer. And then we had a big open area that was the warehouse that we air conditioned and did all that shit so that people could sit in there in big pods and groups and play. You would come in and you would organize the cases. You would help with
work the counter.
You would do the sodas and all that shit. And you would sit and draw. And sometimes you would play Magic. And you and I developed somewhat of a friendship during that time. We weren't really friends at that point. We kind of just talked to each other because you were his woman and you were around.
Right.
And then your job came up from AT&T where you were a manager. Was no longer a thing. And I needed a manager at my other studio. And I was like, you have management experience. I would like to talk to you about taking on a management role at one of my tattoo shops. And then part of that will be that you can learn to pierce. And there was a whole lot of things that went there. That's the short aspect of it. You agreed to it. And then you started working at Black Sales as my manager down there. We taught you the in and outs of the studio. Sean did your piercing apprenticeship, which is my old apprentice from 25 years ago. And then I lost our body piercer at Sacred, and I had you come to Sacred, and you were working at Sacred. This was while I was still married, and you and him were still together. And that's where our friendship truly started, because at that point we were in the same building every single day, hanging out, and like we became very close friends very quick from there. So now that you guys understand how we met, that's how we met each other. That's where our friendship began. That is the origin story of Chris and Peaches. There is a whole lot of ugly on the internet about our history. There's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of lies. There's a lot of half-truths that I have addressed in multiple videos. But I have not addressed any names. I've been very iffy about timelines. There have been a whole lot of other personalities that have been protected because though you and I want to be on the internet for the world to see, the other people in our lives or past people in our lives don't fucking want their business out there. And at this point, it's been 2.5 years since we made the video that we're about to review. And in that 2.5 years, almost all of them have decided to get on the internet and say their piece. Therefore,
identify themselves.
Free game.
Yeah.
I can now have the conversations that I've wanted to have for 2.5 years now. That is from an affair, lies, disgusting behavior, to a divorce, to meeting a new woman, having a whole lot of honest conversations. That was a freeing thing that I can't even begin to explain to people. And then developing into what we have. And we're going to get into all of that, but I want to play the video and we're going to get into that. So you have anything you want to add before we jump into this?
I want to throw up.
Why? I'm fucking pumped.
Just my body reacting.
Yeah. There are a whole lot of people who have tried to ride our coattails and try to get success from this, or to make their name known, or get recognition, or even tell their story. And if they wanted to do that, that's on them. We've been very good about keeping everyone's everything out of our lives, other than saying an X, because an X could be a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, so we've been good about that shit. So this episode was, again, 2.5 years ago. And it's only 30 minutes. So this is probably going to be a longer episode. We have a lot of time to record today because of sick kids and they're at their dad's, and we have time. So we're not going to rush this. So this could be a long episode. It's been a while since we've done a long episode. Are you ready?
Can you like blow me a kiss or something? I need some good idea. Oh, God.
Did that do it?
Yeah. That's
Give you the wink?
The support of my husband.
All right.
Right in the weenus. Hey guys, little quick interruption. If you're enjoying the content, please leave a like. And also don't forget to comment. We enjoy interacting with you guys and hearing your opinions, and it helps the algorithm.
It's also free to do. And if you really want to help make sure the show continues to do, hit the subscribe button and share the content across your social medias. It costs you nothing and it greatly helps the show.
Welcome back
There we
to
go.
To Be Better podcast. I am not throwing a disclaimer on this today. It is New Year's, and this is a vulnerable cast, I guess we're going to call this.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear that though Chris and I give a lot of good information from the life lessons that we've lived and the conversations that we've had and the things that we've learned, a lot.
Look at your body language. You are so uncomfortable knowing what's coming.
Yeah.
It's wild. This is so we don't watch our content.
We don't. I hate seeing myself.
Yeah, normally when we do the premieres are muted
Yeah.
and we're just hanging out in the chat. Today the premiere happened to be on because we were eating lunch and bullshitting while we were waiting for it. But this is wild.
A lot of people believe that we just have this perfect relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and neither one of us are perfect people.
Right.
You know, it's New Year's Day, so happy New Year's to everyone. I spent about 5 hours last night staring at the ceiling, going through it. I've been processing a lot of 2021 and 2022. I mean, realistically, I processed probably about 7 years back last night. Spent a lot of time praying, trying to, ask for things that I really shouldn't have been asking for because I know what's going to come from me asking for those things. But I want to have an accountability moment, and I thought that this would be, as difficult as this is going to be, that this would be a good discussion to have with everyone so that people can see that we're fuck ups.
Right.
Like, we've done a lot. I personally, I believe that everything that I've ever done in my life is a direct action of a decision that I've made, good or bad. It all comes down to decisions that I've made. And, I have borderline personality disorder, and I try not to ever throw that around as an excuse for the decisions that I make. But I know that there are decisions and things that happen in my life that are out of my control because I react because of my BPD. That is a whole another discussion. I have done a lot of self-help books. I've done therapy. I've done dialectic behavioral therapy. I've tried to do a lot of things to make my borderline not be a deciding factor in the way that I handle things.
I have not had a borderline episode since that night. Not one. What are you doing? It's too early
It's
for
already
that.
This is a lot for me.
Yeah. I want to while she's pulling herself together, I'm surprised she's not doing this because that was funny as shit yesterday on TikTok.
Yeah, I should try.
Does it work?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot how well that does.
One of the things that has been a very important thing to me is that I have been able to go, I did XYZ. Not, well, they did XYZ, and because they did XYZ, I did XYZ. And I've not put anyone else's actions on blast. I've not talked about any of the things other than the things that I did wrong, because that's where the focus needs to be, because I can't control other people, especially the people who are not in my life
Right.
anymore, right? Like, I made the decisions. This has moved on. I'm now doing my thing. Like, none of that other shit matters anymore other than the things that I can take accountability for and try to fix my shit. What's that?
Janae said that's a lot of eyeball.
As much as I want to believe that I've got that shit under control, there's just times that I don't.
Right.
So while we were laying in bed last night, I was, processing everything and realizing all of the lies and the shortcomings and the flaws that I've had, the infidelity that I've had in past relationships. I've cheated. There's been a lot of things that I have done that I don't believe in. As a man, I think that a lot of the things that I've done is wrong, but I've had to do those things and I've had to learn those lessons to be able to grow from them.
Should we pause and talk about these things as we go to clarify, or should we just run through this and then talk about things?
I think talk about it as we go.
As we go. Okay, so right there, I said that I cheated. I was a cheater. I had infidelity. The reality is that in my last marriage, I had an affair that lasted years. It was not a one-time thing or like a multiple woman thing. Like, I had a coworker that I was really interested in, and we got very close because most fucking, affairs start in a workplace. And that relationship became an actual relationship while I was married. And regardless of how I feel about that now, in the moment, I had all kinds of justifications for the things that I was doing. And I know, looking back, I know exactly where my marriage ended, like where the dissolution of my vows is what I'm trying to say, but dissolution is not correct. Where I decided that my vows no longer needed to be upheld. And there was a moment where there was a poker game. I'm still trying to skirt around certain things here, but there was a poker game that I was invited to along with my ex and her ex-husband. And that poker game was held at their friends' houses, and it was something that they did on a regular basis. And I got invited, and I started coming. And somewhere along the lines, I was told that I wasn't allowed to play anymore because he didn't want me playing there anymore. And that was where I learned how I need to be a priority in a relationship. I need to be the number one thing. Knowing that I was not number 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that initial situation was enough for me to go, wait a minute, this isn't what I want. Healed me, knowing what I know. That could have simply been a conversation. I need to be a priority in your life. And if I can't be a priority in your life, this marriage isn't going to work. That was not the conversation. There was no conversation. There was actually just fights because I felt like if I'm not allowed to be there, you shouldn't be going there either. This is your ex-husband saying that your new husband's not allowed to go. And if I can't be there as my wife, you should not be going there. And I'd never said that. Not once did I be like, you can't go, because I don't want you to be forced to choose me. I want you to want to choose me. And that's not how that played out. Over multiple arguments that lasted, like this was one of those things that I reiterated years. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I still never got over, right? Like it still bothers me to think about it because I let it ride. I'd never really had a backbone in those situations. I let a whole lot of doormat shit happen. And so that's a me thing, right? Like the situation happened and the way I handled it is the me problem, because there were a whole lot of options and a whole lot of things that I could have done differently that would have gotten me different results, but I handled it the way that I chose. But knowing that I wasn't first made me not want to put anybody else before me, right? Because if I'm not going to be first to somebody, I got to be first to myself. And that's where I realized that maybe this isn't what I want. And that was 7 years before my divorce. So there was a very long time frame where that happened. I met this person, we started hanging out, and the relationship that lasted years while I was married transpired. I'm going to just jump back into this now because I am giving context as we go, and I don't want to just have the long ass conversation.
Okay.
So as we do this, guys, know that everything that we've done in the last 3 years with the podcast is because we both fucked up a lot. And there's a whole lot of things looking back on where we could have done this differently. We could have done that differently. All of this is a direct result in the things that we did. Doesn't matter what other people did to us. Mm-hmm. We made choices here. We are accountable to us and to us only. Okay.
But it doesn't excuse the behavior that I've had. So I had a lot of time last night to think about the way that I've handled things in the past and the fact that there were conversations that should have been had, but because I didn't have the communication skills or know how to articulate myself or even have the fucking backbone to have those conversations, there were people that I loved that ended up being hurted. Best friends, I have had bridges burned, past lovers, my ex-wife. There's a whole lot of things that played through my mind last night, and a lot of it comes down to, the last 2 years of my life, I've been trying to find who I am. I'm trying to rebuild the man that I believe I am, because everybody's got this idea in their head of who they are. Mm-hmm. You have a mental image, like, my eulogy conversation that we've had. I want, when I die, I want somebody to be able to be like, he was a good man and a leader of men. And while I was laying there last night thinking about deleting myself off the planet,
I am not going to get upset and cry on this episode. I also have not wanted to kill myself since that night. Like truly. Like I might have moments where I you're always going to have that intrusive thought driving, like what happens if I just hit that telephone pole, right? Like, that kind of shit is still prevalent. I think I will always deal with that. But this episode, that night, that 6 or 7 hours of me laying there and then us having this conversation changed my psyche. There was a whole lot of healing that happened in this video and a whole lot of acceptance. And it's crazy because I haven't watched this.
Yeah.
Heavily deleting myself off the planet. I realized that in the event that I did that and my eulogy was read, that could not be said in honesty.
Right.
And that's a fucking problem for me. I have been doing everything I can to work on being a better communicator, knowing where my triggers lie, where my shortcomings fall, where my weaknesses are, where my strengths are, so that when that veil of who I believe I am is ripped off again and I'm able to look at who I am, I might be able to look at me in a different light.
Right.
I don't want to be the guy who relives those past experiences over and over and over again in my head, but I know that that's something that's going to have to happen until I process things. I also know that the, how do I word this? All of it, everything that all of the good and all of the bad, all the flaws, the foul shit that I've done, all of that is done. It doesn't matter if it was done yesterday, 2 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's all done. None of it can be taken back. None of it can be changed. I can apologize. I can move on, but it's done.
This is the premiere that we literally just watched. That chick that went through her mental health thing and was Baker acted and stayed in a mental institution and all that shit while she was getting her life together. That's the acceptance that she needs to get over the past and like learn to love herself again, and not allow her husband or whatever he was to manipulate her in the moments based off the things that happened. Those things have happened. Everything that I've been through in my life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, has gotten me to here. And if I would have had a perfect existence, I couldn't be on this podcast having the conversations that we have. And I wouldn't be able to have the relationship that I have with you because there would have been no honesty in it, right? And we're going to get into the foundation of us in terms of like the conversations that we had during courting and the way that looked. That is definitely coming. But I would have never been honest about any of that. There would have been it would have been sugar-coated. And I would have thrown blame and shame and judgment on everyone else. And I would have played the victim because I wouldn't want to be looked at in a bad light. I don't give a fuck how I look anymore. You can not like me. You can believe all the shit that's said about me. You can, good. I'm at peace with all of it. And I don't need that type of shit in my life. So like, just remember when you're trying to throw stones at somebody that you too live in a glass house, that everybody is going through something. And until you've gotten to that healed portion of your life, you shouldn't be focusing on other people's existences. You need to be focusing on yours.
And I will be the villain in people's stories because of the decisions that I've made in my past. And that shit eats at me because I don't want to be that person.
That also doesn't bother me anymore. The being the villain in somebody else's story, I don't give a shit.
I am working on being a good man. You and I have an exceptional relationship.
And I don't give a shit because reading Change Your Past, Own Your Future, or Own Your Past, Change Your Future by John Deloney. The stories that we tell dictate our existence. And if people want to tell negative stories and I'm the villain in their stories, that is their story. My story doesn't have to look that way. I'm not worried about what Tom, Dick, and Jane are doing. I'm worried about what Chris is doing and what Peaches is doing, what the kids are doing, because this is my existence. All that shit that happened in the past is not my existence. That was then. This is my present. I'm currently existing in the moment, trying to get to my future, but even my future doesn't exist, right? Like that shit's being written. So I am trying to own my future. It's just good points. This might end up being a very long episode.
Yeah.
And you can tell me to pause whenever you want.
Okay.
There are things that still get hung up between past relationships that come, when it comes in, it's going to happen. And in the last 2 years, the amount of time that I've spent working on myself, I really thought that like I was past all this shit. I really did. I believed that like I had done enough work. I believed that I wasn't bringing baggage into our relationship. I believed that like I had done the dirty. Like I'm good now. I'm a better man. I'm ready. I'm focused. I'm still learning. I'm still reading self-help books. I'm still on YouTube trying to learn new things. I'm trying to, better the business and rekindle friendships. And I'm trying to do all these things to be that person that I believe that I am in my head. And it takes one person pulling on a thread to unravel all of that shit for me.
Would also like to point out that all of those friendships that I was trying to rekindle, I let them all go. I still speak to some of them, but that level of friendship is completely disintegrated other than Sean. And I realize that sometimes shedding your skin means shedding your social circles because you can't grow if the people around you are holding you back or not growing with you. And like, there's a whole lot of life lessons that's happened in the last almost 3 years since that was said too.
Don't play it yet. Be a second to suck it in before I say what I'm about to say, because what I'm going to say is going to make me cry. I hope you know that you are that man.
Why are you doing that? You just call me a good man on the podcast?
And I'm absolutely honored to be your wife.
So we get emails from people every day. Literally every day we get emails. And there are times that these emails come through and we read them and there's like, we can't help you. Like, this isn't even something that we can touch on. We've had people emailing us about dead children. We've had people emailing us about infidelity. We've all of these fucking emails, porn addiction. And like, I gotta be honest, some of these emails, like, they drag me down. We start these podcasts and we're in such a great high spirit, good mood. And after doing 3 hours of emails or 4 hours of emails, by the time we get up, we're like, fuck. I know you feel it. We're exhausted. We go sit down on the couch and we're tired. Like, we'll eat, come back and try to get more content up because we're trying to have content every day. And it's mentally exhausting. And there are times that people send emails and I'm like, okay, I can relate to this. I've been on one of either one of these sides of this coin. I've either been the guy that's doing the foul shit or I've had it happen to me. And I can try to, you know, put my points of view, like, this is how I handled it, you know, and I can try to deal with those things. And I also believe that anybody can be redeemed. I believe that if you really want to change, you will. I believe that nobody's going to change you. You know, all the things that I've done in my life, even when I was doing the bad things and like, I just accepted that that's who I was and that's what I was doing. There was nothing that anyone could say or do that was going to make me change my behavior. I had to live that life. I had to learn the lessons from it. I had to experience the trauma and the hurt and all of that shit to make myself want to be a better person. So in the event that you guys are with somebody and there's infidelity and they're cheating or there's a porn addiction, although I've never experienced that. I've never had a porn addiction. And I've never physically abused anyone. I've never put my hands on my woman ever in my life. So I guess those are redeeming qualities, you know, but there's a whole lot of other shit that I've done that's wrong. And, you know, I'm fucking 42 years old. I've got 4 decades of shit that I've lived through. So when I tell people, you know, when we have these emails and I'm like, this guy's too far gone, you can see it. He's showing you he doesn't want you anymore. It's because I've been there or because it's happened to me. And when there's infidelity happening and people are like, do you believe they can change? Yeah, I fucking believe they can, but they have to want it. The situation has to change. They have to go through what they're going through to learn, like, this is not okay. I realize this is hurting somebody else. Fuck, I realize this is hurting me. Like, there's a whole lot of things that go into that. You know, it's same thing with breakups and divorces. Like, there's a lot of processing that has to happen. And if you're not willing to do it and you're just jumping from relationship to relationship and you're not doing the dirty work, and you're not reflecting and you're not accepting that you're not fucking perfect and there's room to grow and be better, you're not going to grow and be better. I asked you to sit down today because I wanted to not just make a solo video where I'm talking to the camera and to the people who listen to us, because though I know you would watch this if I did that, like, I want you to know that, like, I genuinely want to be a good man. I
see it. Like, every day you prove to me that that's what you want. I still see it.
I don't want to relive past experiences. I don't want to regress and wake up 10 years from now and be like, damn, this is exactly where I was when I was 37 years old. Like, this is exactly where I was when I was 40. The whole point of life is to grow and evolve and learn. And I believe that God will continue to put obstacles in front of you. Sorry.
It's okay. This is heavy shit, and I'm actually really proud of you for being able to put this on the internet.
I'm really going through it. I know that God will put obstacles in front of you repeatedly until you learn to overcome those obstacles and you overcome them the right way. You are not going to navigate a situation, come out unscathed, and just keep moving on with your life if you didn't learn the lessons. You have to learn those, and we can't learn from other people's mistakes. We can recognize that other people fucked up and that they were hurt and that they were like, damn, you know, that sucks. But until it's you that's wearing those shoes, standing in that position, you don't get to experience everything that goes on there. It's no different than the postpartum conversation we had last night in that email. I will, as a man, will never be able to understand what a woman goes through in postpartum depression, no matter how much I read and how much I try to grasp it. There's an emotional aspect there that I can never physically experience. And because of that, it's all theoretical.
Right.
So in the situation where your parents are like, don't touch the stove or you're going to burn your hand, you're going to touch the stove and burn your fucking hand because you have to learn that lesson.
Right.
The conversation being had here about how until you've been in those shoes and you've had to learn those life lessons, you won't understand what somebody else has to go through. This is the cognitive bias that you have to understand that your person has lived through in order to truly have grace with them. The life experiences that you had and your traumas and my traumas overlap in a lot of ways. We had a lot of similar like bullshit. We had a lot of differences too, but even in the similarities, there are times where like you're talking and I'm like, I went through that. And I was like, it wasn't that bad. Like that, I don't understand why she's upset about that. But then I realized that, we don't have the same lived experience completely. So those minor things could be really big for you. And that's where my grace has to come in. I have to remind myself that you have your own lived experiences and the obstacles that I had to overcome to get me to that point when I felt that trauma or I went through that thing is going to dictate how I navigate it. So where I'm saying here earlier, where I was like, God is going to put things in front of you until you learn how to overcome those obstacles and you can just skirt them from now on. That is part of the healing process. So like maybe before I got to that point where that specific trauma happened, I had already done a whole lot of healing and a whole lot of growing. And that was that.
I don't know. I did not want to start 2023 off the way that we've started today off. And I know that that's, I apologize. It's not something that I wanted you to experience either. I can't control when my brain does what my brain is doing right now.
I know.
It's happened 3 times. I said I wasn't going to cry at all.
Yeah.
You got me first. You started it.
I'm so sorry. I think I'm not sorry. I'm taking that back. I'm recanting. I think you needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say it because it's true.
And I've tried a lot. I've tried therapy. I've tried plant medicine. Mushrooms. I've done everything that I could try to do to try to like fix my borderline and make my brain better and not be depressed and not be suicidal. And there's nothing that I can do. And even when I go to doctors and they give me medicines, the meds work for a little while and then they don't. And when they don't, and you go from being on a high and everything feeling great and you plummet and everything comes crashing down, it's so much harder than just going through the depression.
We've talked about that a lot.
This did not go at all as I'd planned on it going.
Yeah.
I also, I guess it should be clear that we're not having problems. Like you and I are great. We are living as the way everything has always been going. I am processing a lot and we've already talked about it. We talked about it from 1 until 3 in the morning last night. And then again, as soon as I woke up today, I don't know, maybe this is my email to us to try to get help. I don't know. I don't want to be that last minute, like cry for help either. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I know that the things that I've said and done can be apologized for, but that's the extent of that. Like even in the event that I really truly tried to make amends, in a lot of the scenarios, it's not going to do any good. It's not going to change the way things have played out. Things are the way they are, and that's just the way it's going to be. And I understand that too. And I've told the people that I've hurt, I'm sorry. I have even tried to make amends with Forrest. Like, I know that I've burned a lot of bridges. There's been people that I was close to in the past that like they don't exist to me anymore, or I don't exist to them. And those are the decisions that were made that I have to accept one way or another. And though that sucks, like I can learn from that scenario, and hopefully in the future when I have new people come into my life that I bond with, I can maintain that friendship in a different way and save it instead of letting things fall to the wayside like they have in the past. I don't know.
I feel like they also have to be good people though.
Yeah, but I'm not responsible for them. I'm responsible for me.
Right.
And that's
that's one of those things where you can't sacrifice yourself because you want to be a good person to a shitty one.
Yeah. Again though, I can't. This is an accountability thing.
Right.
You know, I don't harbor resentment towards people for the things that they've done to me in the past. Anyone, literally anyone. There are people that I don't like because of the things that they did, and I know their personality and I know who they are because they've shown me more than once that that's who they are. And in a sense, I'm looking in a mirror in that aspect because I've made a lot of those same decisions in life. So what goes around comes around. This is the karma that I'm reaping for all the foul shit that I've done my entire existence. And I do believe that I'm taking steps to right wrongs, and I'm trying to put enough good out into the world by adopting families for Christmas, donating to no-kill shelters, sending people money for Christmas when I know they don't have it, doing the things that I'm doing. But after reflecting last night, I obviously don't feel like I'm doing enough because I'm genuinely upset about a lot of things.
Right.
So now I have to go back to the drawing board. I need to figure out why I haven't been able to let go of what I haven't been able to let go of. I need to start journaling again. I need to start reading again. I need to really start delving inward to try to get over the shit that I've done and the shit that has been done, because I'm only responsible for me.
Right.
I can't change the past. I can only try to make sure that the future doesn't take that same path, and hope for the best. I don't know. This is a 15-minute podcast at this point, and like I may not even put this on YouTube.
Yeah.
I really sat down because I needed to process some shit. But I think it would be good for people to see that we're not perfect. Like we don't have all the answers. We don't have it all figured out. We are still working through a lot of shit on our own.
Like we are actively doing the shit that we preach about.
It sucks.
It does suck. And like I don't know how comfortable I am saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because what you're going through right now could cause a lot of issues in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people might not be willing to understand what you're going through, or because they're hurt by whatever you're going through, they're going to focus on their own pain and you're the cause of it. So now it's going to cause attention. Well, this isn't easy for me.
I know it's not. I know it's not, because I know how our night went last night because of all of this.
So like now I know there's a possibility, like the time that we have the kids, it's going to be stressful and frustrating and it's hard. But I don't blame you. I understand what you're going through. Like thinking that you have everything together and then hitting a fucking brick wall and realizing you're not as set as you thought you were. That's devastating shit.
Yeah.
Like that's like having a sandcastle. Like you just built this perfect fucking sandcastle and it's all cohesive and it's together and a wave comes. Everything that you just built's undone and you have to rebuild it in a different way so that wave doesn't hit it again and take it down. I'm over here crying and you're talking about your experience. Seeing you in this pain sucks. And I think in instances where like one partner is going through a depression and another person has to witness that, people feel helpless and they want to fix things and then they get frustrated because they can't fix things. And that's when that comes in like, well, why can't you just feel better? And that creates tension.
Yeah.
I recognize that there's really nothing that I can do. And because that there's nothing I can do, why would I add on to that with anger and frustration and resentment and make the whole situation worse? I think it's really important to realize like your partner's a human being. And like you putting yourself out here the way you are, even if you use this, if you don't, then all of this is irrelevant. But if you decide to put this out there, your partner's a human being who goes through shit, and you can't get angry when they go through shit. Like I've devoted myself to you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Even in hard times like this, I still have to maintain being your peace. When you're going through something and I'm going through my own thing and shit's just crazy, that's when tensions rise.
Right. Things get difficult for sure.
Right. I don't know. It's really important for me to be a sanctuary for you. So in moments where people would feel validated in anger and frustration and wanting to be resentful and pushing you away, like those are the moments that I want to be closer to you.
These conversations this is what our communication looked like during the quote unquote courting phase, before it was technically a courting phase, because we started as friends. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to jump in and add a couple things real quick, but I want to point out how this conversation is going. I don't remember this.
Me either.
Right? Like I remember the crying in the beginning aspect of this video, but the other 30 minutes I don't remember. And I think I blocked it out because there's still like a men aren't supposed to cry, suck the fuck up pussy. Like, I've been fighting back tears the entire time I was sitting there. But again, I also know I was going through a fucking episode the night before. This is how we've talked to each other since the beginning. So I'm going to sprinkle in things that have been said about me on the internet so that you guys are all aware of why this has become a thing. One of the biggest things that is said about me on the internet is that I cheated on my ex-wife with you while she had cancer, which is not true. I did have an affair on my ex-wife while she got diagnosed with cancer while I was having the affair, and it went on through her treatments and ended before her cancer was done. you and I became friends, like you working at the tattoo shop, that started after she had been cleared of cancer. The reality is my marriage should have ended before the cancer diagnosis was ever given. Like that whole situation should have dissolved way before it fucking got to where it did. And having conversations with her since then, we both agree on that. So he cheated on his ex-wife with Peaches, and she's a homewrecker, and his wife had cancer while they were dating and fucking around. None of that's true. We absolutely became friends during that time frame. Mm-hmm. When my separation happened, I needed a neutral party. And because you were new at the tattoo shop, you were not enmeshed with any of the fucking cliques that were in the 28 employees that I had at that time. Mm-hmm. You were literally the only neutral person I had in my life because of how long I was with my ex. I had no one that I could talk to, not a single soul other than you. And because I was going through a divorce and you knew what was going on and we were hanging out, I fucking unloaded everything. I've said in the beginning, the first year of this podcast, that you were my therapist. Because I wasn't willing to go to therapy. I needed somebody to vent to on my bad days and have the hard conversations with and to challenge my thought process. And because I knew I was going through a divorce and we were separated and I had my own place and I wasn't trying to be in a relationship, the fuck would I want to do that for? I'm free now. You know what I mean? And we had those conversations too. Why would I want to get into another relationship with somebody when I'm going through what the fuck I'm going through right now? So because there was no expectation there, when we were having dinner, I could be like, yeah, I'm a piece of fucking shit. I did this, this, and this is where it happened. And da-da-da-da-da. Like, what does it matter? The worst you're going to do is judge me. Everyone else already fucking is. What do I have to lose right now? You're going to get up and walk out of the diner? I mean, I would rather that happen than me fucking sit here and lie to fake a friendship just to try to hold some sort of peace in my life. Because if I'm going to be miserable and alone, I can do that alone. I don't need people around me to be miserable. Mm-hmm. So we had a whole lot of ugly between us in terms of conversations about what our lives looked like. I got to learn about what you went through in your marriage. I got to learn about your abuses, your body weight. Like there was a lot of broken pieces that were being like a big dice bag just dumped on a table. And then we went through and found our shinies and figured out which ones we wanted to talk about. And over the course of a year, we had a lot of conversations. We did. And they all look like that. Mm-hmm. That was the whole point of it. That those conversations looked exactly like what we're doing right here in this video. And since the podcast has come about, because this was like, 5 episodes? It was really new. Yeah. We started the YouTube channel on the 17th of December. This was New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. So it was within 2 weeks of us creating the podcast. So whatever episode that was. And since then, those conversations have evolved with new vernacular, deeper understanding, and they don't have to be as hard as they were. Like we had it, yesterday, day before, we had a conversation that was less than 10 minutes. Like, and we don't hold on to things anymore because we have deeper understandings, but that comes from the want, right? There's a desire there. It's not discipline. I don't want to experience the life that I've lived in the past. I want to have new experiences and a new life and a better situation. And knowing that, that went on for a year. When my divorce finally came through, it was like a week or two after my divorce came through, I posted on Facebook, like, I'm ready to start dating again. And when I made that post, it was because you and I went to dinner, and that dinner didn't feel like just two friends hanging out anymore. It felt romantic. Like there was definitely something there at that point. We had developed a bond. So I left and I called Tim and I'm like, bro, this has just happened. And I feel like I need to talk to Buddy because like I'm now, talking to his woman. Like this might actually become something, or his ex, you guys weren't together. Yeah. You guys have been together or separated for quite a while at that point. Yeah. But I didn't want to ruin that friendship because you guys had a thing that lasted for less than a year. Could you imagine if I would have destroyed the potential of this over the situationship that you guys had? Like it's fucking stupid when you look at what we have compared to what that was. Right. But I did lose a friend over it. But after I hung up the phone with Tim, I called old boy and I'm like, hey, just so you know, we fucking went to dinner. We've been hanging out a lot. This dinner didn't feel like a dinner. It felt like a date. And I'm going to make an official date, and we're probably going to end up, together. And he was like, I really appreciate you telling me. And then he fucking deleted me from everything and didn't speak to me for like a year and a half. And then when he finally did talk to me about things, it was about him trying to lose weight. And we kind of things were very awkward at that point. Like that friendship was not being able to be rekindled. And I wish him the best. Good luck, dude. Go do your thing. There was a whole lot of other things, not just the relationship that you two had and us being in a relationship. Now there was a lot of business and money that was involved in all of that created a lot of the other problems, which is what made the new friendship weird in my opinion. But that's whatever. I'm not ashamed. I have regret's not the right word either. I wish I would have conducted myself better and all of those things because I have an expectation of who I want to be. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And knowing that there are people out there who remember me from my 20s and my 30s that are just now learning who I am, that had no idea that I did any of that shit or who I was. The people coming in now get this new shiny version of me, this healed version, this is fucking wise version because of all the work that I've done. But all the people that were in my life in that older phase of my life have a very different view of who I am as a person. And you know, when you meet somebody and they got kids and you don't see them for a while and you see their kids and they're growing up, you're like, what the fuck happened? How did this happen? Like you were 3, you're 18 now. What the hell? That's the same thing. So when people know you from that time frame and they see you 20 years from now, to them, you're still that person. You will always be that person because time doesn't exist to you in that aspect. You're not there, right? So there's a whole lot of that goes into all of that. Do you have anything before I go? Because I feel like I'm just rambling now.
I think this is doing for me what set this video to be a thing, the precedence for that video.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I needed this.
I love that. All right, here we go.
I feel like all of this sounds stupid.
No, I mean, it's the way you feel. This is not, I mean, this is not an easy thing. Like I'm one of those people that in the 80s, baby, like, don't fucking cry, suck it up, you pussy. You know what I mean? Like, this is not an easy thing. And we talked about it a lot this morning before we actually sat down and did this because I wasn't sure that this is, I don't think this is a good idea. I think that there's value here. And I think that people can see that, you know, you can learn from your past and you can try to work on being better. People can be redeemed.
All right.
People can grow and they can make decisions to be better, but they have to want that change. They have to continue to want that change because once the motivation of wanting to be a good person fades, the discipline that you've instilled during that time of motivation is what's going to carry you through. So, you know, the last 2 years has been very just crazy. And the last year has been very, very crazy. Like it's been a fucking roller coaster. And I really felt like I had it under control. I thought that like I had processed all my shit. I accepted who I was and what I've done. And like
speaking right there, that line of thought was a lot about my borderline because I understand that borderline gets easier as you get older, but I allowed my borderline to dictate my existence the way that I tell people all the time, you can't do. And that I allowed my borderline to enrage me. I would disassociate, disconnect. I would push people away. I love you. I hate you. Get away from me. Come back. You know, that was very much a thing for me. And I allowed a lot of my borderline to be excusable behavior. Well, I have borderline. That's just the way it is. Right. And then, you know, once the separation happened, there was a whole lot of, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want to live like this. And if I ever do find another relationship and this is who I am, why would anybody want to be here? That divorce was a big eye opener, you know, because I was always the person that didn't believe in it. I thought that I was going to fucking die with that chick because I watched my mom and my stepdad go through all kinds of hell and they're still together through him being in prison, through her fucking being the reason he's in prison, to drug addictions, to alcoholism, to surgeries, to like all of the shit that they had gone through. Infidelity, they're still together and still doing the marriage thing. And he's fucking supporting her and working. He's like almost 70, still working every day, 60, whatever he is now. And so there was a lot of that belief in me because of my parents. So, and here's another example of that. You tend to mimic their behavior. Like my stepdad is Catholic and he doesn't believe in divorce. He would have never, even though he was there was infidelity and he was with another woman and living with her, he wasn't divorcing my mom. In the eyes of God, they're married. Like that was his thought process. And I held on to a lot of that. And I didn't have the same values. I didn't have it because of the religion aspect. I had it because that's what I saw. I saw my mom being as fucked up as my mom is and my stepdad loving her through all of it. Even after all of the ugliness that happened in their lives, they still made it work. I understand now how abusive that relationship is and how fucking toxic and how I absolutely do not want to live that way. But I was willing to suffer through a whole lot of things because this is just the way it's going to be.
I don't know.
Yeah, the rug pulled out from under you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then hit with it. I don't have anything else. I'm going to watch this and then decide whether or not I'm going to post it. But in the event that this gets posted, guys, I really hope that this does not detour you from sending us emails. We definitely don't have our shit together like everybody believes we do.
Right. We just have the tools to cope with it.
But we've been doing the work, and we have been doing the work. You know, we've been reading and communicating and doing everything that we can do to make sure that we don't repeat the past, because we both have one. Mm-hmm. And we've done a very good job at it so far.
Right.
You know, and there's not been arguments. Like, we've not had major fights even. And I really thought last night was going to be one of them. I really thought last night was going to be a big fucking deal. And though it was a big deal, we didn't go to bed angry. Like, there was.
I thought that night was going to be a really big deal because I was on the phone with my ex-wife on New Year's Eve having a fucking like 3-hour fight. And I didn't put that on here. That was not relevant information to the podcast at the time because I was trying to protect the other people in my life that did not want to be on the internet and did not want to have their shit together or put out there. So there was no reason for me to say why we had that whole thing. But all of that started because on that conversation with her, I admitted a whole lot of shit. Like I like laid a lot out. And then I had to come in and have it with you. And like, to know that I have my woman that has seen all of the ugly and knows the ugly of the divorce and all of that shit. Like, I expected to come into conflict. Like, why the fuck are you even doing that? Like, I really expected you to come at me, and I know that you wanted to. I knew you were hurt. Like, and I don't think that you wanted to come at me out of like, you know, I hate you, but hey, I'm here now, and I should matter more than that does. And there's a whole lot of grace in that moment because you saw what I was going through, and you could have reacted horribly. And you chose not to. And we had a lot of conversations. It fucking destroyed our New Year's. It was the worst New Year's that we've ever had.
Yeah.
But there was a whole lot of growth that came from it over the next couple of weeks, and like conversations that were had that were just conversations that still had a hurt tone behind them because they were just conversations. They weren't fights. There weren't arguments. There were arguments that stemmed from it. Absolutely. But for the most part, they were just easy conversations that were, hey, why did this play out? What was that? Da 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 da, and we would just have little micro conversations, and we would move past it. That's the training that we talk about on the podcast all the fucking time. You have trained me that I can come to you without having to worry about a reactive situation. This is not okay. I'm not okay. This is what's going on. I know this is going to hurt your feelings. I need to get this out. Blah 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 blah. Okay, thank you for telling me. I'll process it and get back to you. And that's the way that looks sometimes. But that you have trained me that I am okay to come and have these conversations. That training started in the courting phase, which is why we tell people all the time, you need to get to know your person before you jump into a real relationship with them.
There was a conversation that was had, and we laid there and watched TV until we both fell asleep.
We cuddled.
Yeah, we did for like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew I was awake. You rolled over at one point and you knew I was awake. I don't know if it was my breathing or if it was the fact that I was constantly tossing and turning.
I think it was you rolling over.
But you knew I was awake, and you put your hand on me and you were like, are you okay? Like, you knew that you could have just rolled over. You could have been like, oh, he's not sleeping again. Rolled over and went back to sleep and completely ignored me. You know what I mean? And I needed that last night. I needed that conversation. I needed that touch. I needed to know that, like, that it still mattered that I woke up today. Sorry about that. For those of you who are not familiar with borderline and don't understand the way that depression with somebody who has borderline works, people who have suicidal thoughts and deal with suicidal depression deal with it differently than people who have borderline. You take that and times it by 100 with borderline, and that's the case. So when I have thoughts like the one I was just trying to convey, you think when you're depressed, you think, I could just end this and the pain would go away. I wouldn't hurt anymore. It would be done. Then you add the borderline to that, and it's no longer just my pain would go away. Others' pain would go away. You're the problem. You should remove yourself. If you remove yourself, other people's lives will be better because you're no longer the problem here. And those thoughts encroach and they amplify, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. I really didn't want this podcast to go that route. I really wanted to just sit down and kind of own some of my shit from the past and be like, hey, I'm not perfect. I am working on taking accountability. I'm a very flawed individual, and I have done everything wrong in every relationship I have ever been in to some degree, and I'm owning that. You know, I've made my apologies to the people that I can apologize to. Not that that even remotely fucking matters, because they're already moved on with their lives, and I'm not trying to gain anything from it other than them knowing that, like, hey, I am trying to be a better person. But even in doing that, that's a me thing. I'm doing that for me. They don't fucking give a shit. They've moved on with their lives. Why would I even take the necessary steps to try to atone to them?
Right.
I don't owe them anything. They don't owe me anything. There's not a reason for us to even have these conversations. And there have been a lot of times in life where I've reached out to people from my past, and I have been like, hey, I know that I did this. I know that I said this. I know that you said this too, and I forgive you for it. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to rekindle anything. I just want you to know, like, I realized I was a piece of shit at the time in my life. I'm sorry. But that also is a me thing. People don't need that. People don't need you to reach out to them after 20 years and apologize for something you did.
We do that for ourselves. That is a selfish, egotistical thing to think that we need to reach out to somebody after 20 years or 10 years or 5 years to make amends. If life has moved on, life has moved on. You apologizing is not going to change anything. And unless you're trying to rekindle things, or you're trying to make amends and try to somehow make a relationship again, that shit's not necessary. I truly believe that we do that because of our own ego.
People have moved on with their lives. It may make them feel better for a day or two, but they don't give a fuck.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say. I just didn't want to end this abruptly with me fucking about to lose my poo. So do you have anything that you want to add to any of this?
Yeah, I guess people have been asking me like things that I do to be a better wife. I feel really fucking stupid. Like, here's a wife tip. But
Last night was one of those things, though, on all fronts. Before we went to bed, when I was awake in the middle of the night, and then again this morning. You know how easy it would have been for you? I'm sorry. You know how easy it would have been for you to just be like, this is affecting me too. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like, and I've experienced that. I've had a lot of people that don't understand borderline just be like, why can't you just be happy? Can't you just get over it? Like, it's a choice. Choose to fucking be happy. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
The fact that you made a conscious decision to realize that I was really, truly struggling and put yourself second in that scenario is how you, that's your wife tip. It literally changed the course of my night last night.
Yeah. Like, when you're going through it, it makes it hard for me because I go through it too. Like, when you're going through it, I'm fucking going through it.
Right.
When you're happy, I'm happy. And those times that where we're going through it, like last night, you said I could just roll back over and not given a fuck that you were up. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
You know, those times where if something's going on and you're being distant and, you know, you haven't kissed me good morning, or like I'm cooking in the kitchen and you're not being goofy with me the way you usually are, a lot of people go, all right, fuck him.
Right.
Like, he's not being affectionate with me. I'm not going to be affectionate with him. Like, when you're going through things and you're a little more withdrawn than usual, like, I will still come up behind you and give you a kiss on your neck and tell you that I love you and be goofy with you and sit on your lap and try to make you smile. It's hard, but I push myself to do those things because I know you're not doing this of your own fruition.
Right.
I would put money on the fact that if you could pay somebody to fix your fucking brain, you would do it.
Yeah.
So why would I make that harder for you?
You know, we talk.
Because people are selfish. Because people have their own cognitive bias. And if I'm not okay, I matter. It doesn't matter that you're going through it because now you're affecting me too. It doesn't matter that you're having a moment of wanting to unalive yourself and you have not been able to express how truly close you are to stepping out of this existence. But I'm not okay anymore because you're not okay. And because you're not okay, you're making me not okay. I can't do this anymore. That's why people do that. Because people can't just accept the fact that their person has their own lived experiences and their own mental health or their own hurts and desires and unspoken expectations. People act like that. We see it in the emails all the time. The people who write in who are like, every time I try to have a conversation with them, they get defensive. And we try to dissect what's going on as to why they're getting defensive, but we have no idea what's really going on in their own headspace. You don't know what's going on in their own headspace, and you're taking everything super fucking personal. The reality is that not everybody on the planet's a piece of shit. There might be people out there who are with really nasty, ugly people that have a whole lot of foul shit going on. But the reality, I think the bigger reality is that the greater majority of people is that we're all just fucking damaged and broken and trying to do the best we can. And we get to a point where we don't see a reason to keep pushing. We accept that comfort. We accept that this is what life is going to be because this is what life has always been for us. It doesn't have to be though. And that's where, that want to grow and change and do more and read and learn and meditate and heal comes into play. You know what I mean?
A lot about reciprocating energies and to give back what you put in. And we talk about having to be the bigger person. And nobody wants to be the bigger person all the time. If this was our life all the fucking time, it would be exhausting for you and you wouldn't want it. You would get to the point where you're like, this isn't worth it to me. Like you are basically having to put yourself second to a fucking nut job. Somebody that's got a mental illness is fucking struggling with their entire fucking life to try to just have some semblance or hope of happiness. It's not fair to people. So I understand that when we talk about being the bigger person and reciprocating injuries, the fuck, that sometimes that's not an easy thing to do. And people absolutely don't want to be the bigger person all the time.
Right.
Those conversations need to be had. You really need to talk about like, what is the underlying problem? Like, why are we going through this still again today, day after day after day, until you can understand what's really going on? And maybe that understanding will be a wake-up call or a break in what's going on, and it could lead to healing, and it could lead to a new process of thought. It's necessary. If you love your person and you really believe that you're going to spend the rest of your life with them, sometimes that's just the way you have to do things. I also know that you deal with depression and anxiety, and you have your moments, and I know that there are things that you need when you're going through it that were things that I had to work on actively making the decision to give you when you're going through it, because I have always been a match energy person. That's a borderline thing. When I think you're off, I think I'm a piece of shit. There's no reason for you to be here anymore. You don't want me. And that abandonment shit kicks in real fucking hard for me. But I've also had to realize that you're a whole person just like I am, and your issues are not negated just because I'm here. So like I've had to actively work on giving you the affection that I know you need when you're going through things. And it's not easy. It's really fucking not easy. Just like you said, when it's not easy for you to try to comfort me when I'm going through what I'm going through, because you get on this roller coaster with me. Mm-hmm. But you're worth it to me. So I try to do those things, even though it's putting me out to do it sometimes. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
I get it. I feel like I do the same thing sometimes.
But it's necessary. And I think that that's also why we have the relationship that we have, and we have the healthiness that we have, because once everything kind of calms down, it's like nothing happened.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we just forget that there was a problem, but we've talked about the problem while we're dealing with what we're dealing. And when things are calm, it doesn't feel like there's an underlying issue anymore. It feels like we just kind of naturally work through it. Now we're going to watch TV and have some popcorn and fucking have a dope night because we worked through what we needed to go through, and it not being a blown up ordeal. Does that make sense?
It does. Like we don't blame the other person
right.
for their mental illness. Like there are times where I have PTSD from things and I get triggered hard. And in those times, like you don't get.
Guys, it's been 2.5 years since we recorded this, and guess what? We still have PTSD and things that trigger us really fucking hard. And we still have to navigate new things. Those things are going to come up out of nowhere. Hey, I don't know where the fuck that came from, but we now need to discuss this. And sometimes those triggers look nasty. Sometimes it creates a whole lot of turmoil, and it can spread division. Like you have to then prioritize the conversation and figure out how to have the hard talk, or decide if whether or not you need to listen and not actually even respond, because sometimes that's what you need to do in the moment, and then have the conversation when the emotions have died down. There's a whole lot of that. But you would think that after 2.5 years, we would have figured all this out by now, and like we would not have our own personal shit anymore because of all the healing, and it's still very much a thing. So for those of you guys who are just tuning in and listening to these podcasts, you got a long fucking road ahead of you, and it's not going to just end by, 1 or 2 episodes.
Get mad at me for those things.
Right.
You could get extremely pissed off at me and be like, well, why don't you just fix it? I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to leave until you calm down.
Right. And that's the thing for people.
It is a thing
we
for
both
people.
experienced it, I don't have anything else on this topic, and I really don't want to start crying again. So
yeah, I'm done.
All right.
So now I can turn that off, and I can come back to this screen, and I can open another tab and pull up my notes from last night, because I have a whole ass sheet of things that need to be discussed. because I want to make sure that all of the dirty laundry is out so that nobody can go, well, they did. Yeah, we fucking did. And we've talked about it a lot. And now it's really out there. All right. So I did make a post last night in the Discord. That's the very first thing on this document that I'm going to read, just because I want everyone to really understand where this is going. And it says, remember that you have a past and that your life is not perfect at all. We are all a work in progress, and you should refrain from throwing shade at others. I don't care how justified you feel in doing so. Everyone's rock bottoms look different. Some people are still going through it and have no idea how to get through it. You need to have grace, be understanding, and remember that your life is yours and yours alone. Theirs is theirs, and at the end of the day, you can't control people. Hating them won't get you to where you want to be and can only ultimately set back your own healing journey. If you are so worried about what other people are doing, you're never going to get better, right? Because you're living at the whim of other people. All right. So I touched on my affair that lasted for years. That affair was more than just some ass. Like there was an actual relationship there with a whole nother person. And that it ended while she was going through cancer treatments. I touched on the fact that she was clear of cancer a year before we separated, and then another year for the divorce to go through. During that time, Peaches and I got close. We touched on all of that. Do you want to talk on the courtship at all and the way that looked?
We can.
Okay. So with the courtship thing, I count that separation phase as part of our courtship, even though there was no intention there, because we were pretty clear that we weren't going to do anything. Knowing that I was not putting a best foot forward, and you got to see the good, bad, and ugly in me. How was that for you? Because you were catching feelings during that.
Yeah. I appreciated the brutal honesty.
It didn't make you want to run away?
No.
How did it affect you knowing that I had an affair? Because I told you that. Like, I gave you all the dirt.
Yeah. And it wasn't a beat around the bush, or I heard it from someone else and I had to be like, hey, what's this about? You were upfront about everything. It was a little bit scary. You know, I was... Because I was starting to catch feelings, I was starting to question, like, what am I doing? Why am I talking to this guy? Like, should I tell him? Should I not tell him? Should I just leave it be? It also made me respect you. It takes a lot to own your shit like that.
There's a lot of conversations about things that we would or would not accept from people moving forward.
Yeah.
Because we had the conversations of what went wrong in our previous relationships. And again, those conversations weren't, well, they did X, Y, Z. It was, these are the things that I did. And because of these things, it made our life worse. And like, there were times where we threw shade at our exes, right? Because we were hurt. That's a normal thing. And there was safety in the conversation. But it wasn't, how could they do this to me? It was like, this happened, and here's how I responded or reacted to it. And there's things that I could have done differently because I want to make sure that we're just being truthful. Like I had lied and hid so much from people around me for so long that I didn't want that anymore. I just wanted to get it out. And like, if I thought going to a priest would have been the thing, like it would have helped. I prayed about it, gave it to God. He knew what the fuck I was doing. That did not make me feel any better. Being able to talk to somebody and actually get that off my shoulders was big.
Yeah. During our courting phase, like when we were actually courting, our courting phase was not perfect.
No, I put you through a lot.
Yeah. It was a lot of, I don't think I can do this. And then me like grasping to not let go.
Well, you saw things in me that I hadn't seen in myself yet. You know, there was a lot of self-loathing. There was a lot of my life just kind of ended. You know, what I expected to be the rest of my life is now not the rest of my life. And even though that 6 or 7 years was really ugly and there was a lot of bad, I still expected that to be what my existence was. And I mean, I'm grateful that things obviously turned out the way that they were. I'm much happier now. You know, I was able to learn a whole lot of hard lessons to get me to who I am now. And I like who I am now. And I didn't like who I was then. So for me to push you away or to try to self-sabotage and make it so that like you're not here, and like if I show you how shitty of a person I can be, you'll just leave, right? And then if you leave, I get to be the victim again. And that was mindset. Like that was actually something that I was going through because of the abandonment aspect of my borderline. You know, the time that we recorded this, I had already read 150 self-help books.
Wow.
Yeah. By the end of that year, I was at 300 books.
That's crazy.
And that was, you know, physical copies as well as Audible and all of the, the free books that you could get on YouTube, because you can find a lot of the audio books that you want to listen to on YouTube for free. But even in that, there was a lot of things that like I would glaze over. Like there's so much shit in self-help books that don't benefit me because it wasn't relevant to my situation, and I couldn't find something to hold on to stay engaged. And, I'd get halfway through a book, 3/4 through a book, and be like, I fucking hate this. What am I doing? Yeah. And then, I'd put it down and just start another one right away. It got to the point where I started using the Audible credits or the previews, because if I couldn't listen to the first 4 minutes of a preview based off the author's voice or whoever's reading it, I would just move on past it. Wasted a lot of money in that year.
I believe that.
So one of the other things that we talked about a lot during our courtship was my depression. We talked about the way the meds affected me and me almost unaliving myself. We talked about the many times where I would sit in my car with my ready to leave on dead end roads where nobody would find me for a little while. We talked a lot of that. We talked about my 6-year depression and what that 6-year depression looked like and how I no longer recognized who I was when I looked in the mirror. You get to a point where that shell of a man shit, and you become a Sims character or an NPC, and you just do what's expected of you to get through your day, and you're literally just existing because that's what's expected of you. And, talking on that depression aspect, I said in that video that we just watched that I was a fucking coward. I had no backbone at all. Like I let people walk all over me. There were facets of my life that I was very strong headed on, and I was a force to be reckoned with because I had no other choice. Like that was the thing that was keeping me going kind of thing. But that shell of a man and that cowardice is also part of the reason that I never pulled the trigger, because I was afraid of what would happen if I did. If there is a hell, do I want to spend the rest of my life there? And if there's not a hell, and I end my existence in my 30s or 20s, because there was times there, what would have happened? The world would have went black. I would have done other people a favor by removing myself from existence, and I wouldn't have gotten to experience my life. 25 to 30 is a quarter life crisis. You're not even a fucking true adult in today's terminology. Like most 25-year-olds are still in and out of their parents' houses. I was a mess. So at 35 years old, I'm just past a quarter life. I still have another 70 years. Maybe if I live to 100, like what that I deserve to be happy. If I end this now, I will never know what that happiness looks like. Will the last 6 years of my life be a depression? And that's why we've talked about on the podcast. Do you really want, if you were to die tomorrow, do you want to look back at the next 5 years, the last 5 years of your life in front of your maker and be like, I've been fucking miserable. I didn't get to enjoy this gift that you gave me. I fucking made a bunch of really shitty decisions. And in doing so, I had to live with the consequences of my actions. And I chose to stay, and I chose to suffer, and I chose to like. And that's where a lot of those conversations come from in the podcast. And I bring that up because we talk about things in this podcast from life experience. It's not theoretical. Some of the shit is because we read it and it's helped us. Some of it makes a lot of sense where, hey, I didn't realize that, or I didn't know it. But like, you're not born with infinite knowledge. You have to learn to overcome the obstacles so that you can give somebody else guidance to get through those obstacles. We posted a video of us overlanding. And I'm like, turn. And somebody's like, tell them driver or passenger so they know which way to turn their tires. I would have never thought to do that. But that comes from lived experience. Somebody else that was like, hey, this is a really good idea, taught it to them, and they passed that to us. And that's how life is supposed to go. This is a evolution of existence. And we talk all the time about how dumb you are in your 20s. And I've talked a lot about how my 30s were really good in terms of like finances and money and business. But that's where my 30s was good at. The rest of my 30s was a fucking disaster. But business was good and money was good. And I was financially better off. And I got to travel and do things that I enjoyed. But those were small slivers of that decade. During that 6 years, I'm estimating that at least 20 to 30 times I ended up in that car on a dead end road, wanting to unalive myself because I didn't want to go home. When you think about that number over the course of 6 years, that's a lot. It's a lot. You shouldn't, you know what I mean? It's just, that's insane. Talked about the freedom of the honesty. I am going to touch a little bit on the cancer treatments and the way things went through all of that, because that seems to be a really big conversation. Apparently I'm a real piece of shit because of everything that went on while my wife had cancer. Yeah, I was. I did that shit. But it started before the cancer thing happened. I was mentally checked out of my marriage way before the cancer diagnosis had gotten there. There was a whole lot of problems that were going on before that, and things just progressively got worse and worse. And there was a part of me that stayed because of the cancer diagnosis. Here's how fucked up our brains can be and how we justify things. I was having an affair when she was diagnosed, and I viewed it more honorable to stay during her cancer treatments than to leave during her cancer treatments, even though I was having an affair. We really do justify things to ourselves to fit a narrative that we have. If I would have left her during those cancer treatments, got with the other woman because it wasn't you, and that's where my life went, I would have been a piece of shit for that too. There was not a scenario in that where I could have won or come out clean and unscathed because I had been doing shit for a long fucking time before it got to that. Even if I would have called it off the moment there was a cancer diagnosis, I still had an affair. The honor was gone at that point. So everything that happened beyond that, like I had to regain my honor. I had to redeem myself and realize that I do deserve more than I'm giving me, let alone anybody else in my life, because what I was doing wasn't an honorable thing. I was looking for anything that I could grasp onto to bring me some sort of happiness, to make me feel seen and appreciated and wanted and loved. It's crazy. It's crazy because looking back on, like watching that video and looking back on it, like if I would have tried to have that conversation that night or that morning when we were recording that, there's no way I'd have gotten through this conversation. But I don't view me as that broken man that was in that video anymore. Like there's still things obviously that fucking upset me. Like you telling me that I'm a good man and you're proud of me just fucking almost made me lose it on the podcast a minute ago. And then realizing that I admitted in that video that you putting on your hand on my chest is the reason that you woke up next to me the next day. That night I was done. Like I was ready to check the fuck out. I was completely convinced that this world would be better off without me. I remember that night, not gonna cry. I remember that night, and I remember you rolling over in the middle of the night because you had fallen asleep before me and I was still awake, and you asked me if I was okay. And that 2 to 3 hours of conversation that we had happened after you had already fallen asleep because I was awake. And like, you don't realize how much a touch or a conversation or just simply being with somebody. And we've said this over and over again. You can simply go, "Hey, are you okay?" And they're like, "No." You want to talk about it? No. Well, can I sit here? Can I just sit next to you for a little while? That could be the reason that somebody doesn't fucking kill themselves. You have no idea where people's headspaces are because they don't tell you. And if you think that I'm wrong, look at Robin Williams. Would you have ever believed that that man would have hung himself? It's insane to me. Random acts of kindness go a long way, guys. You never know what somebody's going through. I am going to touch on the relationship with my biological daughter briefly. I've had a lot of people in the beginning of our podcast ask about that. And at the time, the relationship was still there. At the beginning of the podcast, our relationship had actually turned a corner and we were doing really well. And I went from being the person that she called when she needed something to like trying to truly establish a relationship with her. My opinion on her husband and the way that she is living her life created a lot of problems between her and I. And when she found out about the affair, she stopped speaking to me altogether. She wrote me the fuck off. So I don't have a relationship with my biological daughter. I love her to death. I wish to God she'd reach out to me and we could rekindle things. But I'm also, other than trying to reach out the way that I have in the past, like I've sent multiple emails and text messages and trying to get her to speak to me, she won't. I'm not going to go where I'm not wanted. She is an adult. She has her own life. And maybe one day she'll go, "Hey, that was still my dad. I know that I did it with mine." And maybe that relationship will pick back up. The reality is that I did not have a relationship with my daughter. I had a child. I skirted a lot of my responsibilities as a father, which is why I'm so hard on young men who have kids, why I want them to be a good father because of the regrets that I have with my daughter. I don't want to see the people in my life make the same mistakes I did. I want you guys to realize that your life is a whole lot more than your 20s and 30s. I was young. I was under 20 when my daughter was born. And I made a choice to leave a whole lot of things behind. I missed graduations and football games, so like cheerleading and all that shit. And I paid for a whole lot of things just so that I didn't have to deal with it. And that's a lot of my regret. Those are my regrets in life. I would have loved to have had a relationship with her. And like, as I've gotten older and she's gotten older, I think that we would have been able to have a dope life. But I also realize that I'm very busy and I don't make a lot of time to just small talk. So would that have really worked? I don't know. There's a whole lot of what if and questions in that. So I think that that's all I want to touch on. I know that we may get into some stuff with you, but I want to reiterate the points in all of this, that the entire point of the podcast up until now has been growth. It's the way that you're living is painful. It's not good. What you're doing is not fucking working, and there is a better way. Until you get to the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Your life's not going to change. You can dream and wish and hope all you want, but until you're ready to go through the hell that you have to go through to improve your fucking existence, you're not going to. This podcast started, our TikTok started, and all of our relationship advice started because there is a better way. And there was nobody telling us how to do it. We were just fucking winging it based off of trauma and hurt and social expectations and what life was supposed to look like based off of your social circles. Was bullshit. It was hell. It was miserable. And I didn't fucking want that anymore. And we had a lot of conversations about that in the beginning too, which is why the neutral ground aspect came about. And I tried integrating you to my social circles after my divorce. We went out on dinner dates with friends and couple dates and things like that. And it was cool. Like it was nice for people to see me happy and thriving, but I shed that. I've shed all of those relationships. I still talk to these people when the time causes, or when the time calls for it. But I'm not trying to go and have dinners and hang out and do those things. My social circles have evolved. And the people who have come into my life, I have been very clear about our past. When we sat down to talk to Belle about the Good Wives, I sent a fucking
novel.
It was multiple messages about all of this so that she knew what she was getting into, because there is a lot of ugly and a lot of lies and a lot of misinterpretations and a whole lot of speculation and rumors and things that I've refused to touch on, because my story is mine and their story is theirs. And for me to go and spill other people's dirty laundry, regardless if I was involved in it, is a problem to me. Like, it didn't feel good. I didn't want to air that shit. It wasn't a matter of me looking bad. Me telling people I had an affair while I was married already made me look bad. What more could I have done to make me look at any worse? And with all the TikToks that I said, if you heard these things, I don't care if you believe it's true or not. I want you to believe that it's true. I want you to think that I was this evil piece of shit person and then get the fuck away from me. I would rather have that be the case than me having to explain a version of me that no longer exists. We evolve, we grow, we change, we learn new things. We have our perspective shifted because of a single piece of information can change the way that you view things. What did they say in Ready Player One? Somebody can read War and Peace and think that it's a basic novel, and somebody could read the back of a shampoo bottle and unlock the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah.
There's been plant medicine that has changed a fucking lot, which is why I'm such an advocate for plant medicine. There have been experiences taken that have been reintegrated over the course of weeks that have made me learn and change and view things differently. And that's, that's a whole thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say this, and then I'm done speaking for a little bit, but everything that I went through in my life, all the dirty shit that I did, all the things that was done to me, all the things that I couldn't escape, all the things got me to exactly where I am right now. And speaking solely on my life, where I am right now is I am a man who is fucking thriving in his marriage. I am helping raise two beautiful kids that are a handful, and they're getting a version of me that my own kids didn't, because I am healed now. I am saving marriages. I am creating businesses and lifelong friendships. I am traveling the world. I am doing everything that I have ever wanted to do in life, and I'm doing it with a fucking smile on my face. And I'm doing it because during that 6 years, I never pulled the trigger. I'm doing it because the last time that I wanted to check out, there was a hand placed on my chest in the middle of the night. I have written books. We have done all of this, but I'm speaking on me, so I'm using the I terms right now. It's not personal, babe. I have had my hand in the development of check-ins. We have created a community of people that are helping other people thrive. We have helped other people start businesses just as a thank you for being in our life. We have taken part behind the scenes in a whole lot of other things. And like, if you would have asked me at the start of the podcast where I thought my life would be, I thought I'd still be tattooing. I would assume that I'm still just a shop owner and that I have a good wife and a good relationship in that aspect. And like I can come home and the house will be clean. And when the kids become too much and I don't want to be there anymore, I can just dip out and go back to work. I don't have to be a part of the things that I don't want to be a part of. Like this was all laid out in the beginning of the courtship and there's not an expectation there, right? Like we know what's what. And I would not be the man that I am had all of this shit not transpired the way that it did. And that evolution continues to fucking go. I'm not ashamed. So all of you on the internet that want to throw hate and shame and judgment and talk shit about me, I don't fucking give a shit. I did all of it. Even the shit that I didn't do, believe I did it. Hate me. Go ahead. All of it doesn't change our life. All of the ugliness, all of the shit talking, all of the other content creators who are trying to build a name off of our history or off of what we're currently doing, you're not hurting anything. All of this shit has been out there already. It's not new information. Who I was then and who I'm now is not the same thing. So come after me all you fucking want, dude. I don't give a fuck. Drink toilet water. I don't care. And now you know that. I think you should touch on a couple things.
Okay.
Because there's been some other things from your side of the world too.
So a couple of things have cropped up. One of them being that my current husband wrecked my previous family.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
No, my ex-husband and I did a fantastic job of ruining our marriage on our own. And I had been separated from my ex-husband for years by the time I met you. By the time we had that first conversation, I was like, fuck that guy. I never want to be in the same room as him. We had been separated for years. I was in a whole nother relationship. So my husband is not a wife stealer. That was not a thing.
Yeah. I think it's funny how people, and real quick, people both call us home wreckers.
Yeah.
When we didn't wreck either one of our shit. And you can't wreck somebody's home.
Yeah.
You can be the other person. But the choice to ruin a marriage falls on the people in the marriage. It has nothing to do with the other person.
Yeah.
I think it's asinine that people do that shit because it takes the blame away from the person who's actually going through what they're going through and making the decisions that they're making. And it makes it easier to throw blame on other people. Well, fuck that person. They're a home wrecker. Well, did they really ruin the home or was the relationship already fucked up enough for the person to step out of the marriage or whatever it was that they had done? And why aren't you blaming the person who was in the marriage? Why aren't you blaming the actual marriage and the shortcomings of what happened in that marriage to get to that point? If you're going to have a conversation, have an honest one. Otherwise, don't bother. You're wasting time. All you're doing is blaming other people and fucking making yourself look stupid.
Right. I don't know what else to touch on. That's the main one that I've seen.
This is proof that you get to control your existence and you give power to people to manipulate and do the things that they're doing. Knowing that I have accepted my hand in everything that I've ever done, it can't be weaponized against me. It's like, I don't even know how to explain it. If you did something and you're like, yeah, I did that shit. And somebody's like, and they didn't know that you're okay with that. Like you moved past that and they're like, yeah, well you did. And you're like, and?
Right.
You weren't a part of that. What do you give a fuck? Like, why are you, what business is that even of yours?
Yep.
Like I'm good. I'm sorry that something that had nothing to do with you has affected the way that it has affected you, but you weren't there for that. So I don't know what to tell you. And then for the people who are like, well, you guys have a podcast talking about how healthy marriage is and you both had bad marriages. Yeah, motherfucker. Why do you think we're here talking now?
Right.
If we had perfect marriages, why would we be on here giving marriage advice? We would have nothing to relate it to. Where's the comparison in going, my marriage is fucking great now, and that last one sucked ass. So let's talk about what we did and what we're currently doing to make sure that our marriage is as good as it is. Is Chris wearing a DILF shirt? Yes, I am.
Another thing I want to touch on in my previous marriage, I emotionally cheated on my ex-husband multiple times.
You talked about this a lot on the podcast.
I have talked about it. The emotional cheating happened after I found out that physical cheating had taken part on the other person's end. So I was mentally checked out at that point. We also had children by that point. So should I have left instead of cheating? Yes. I felt like shit though, because I felt like I am the end all of my family. I'm ruining everybody's life if I leave.
Right. You took a lesser evil in your brain. And that's what I was talking about earlier. It's crazy what we can justify to ourselves.
Right. Have I done things to hurt the people in my past? I have. Whether intentionally, like I knew what I was doing and I didn't care that it was going to hurt them, or unintentionally because I was in a trauma response or I was in fight or flight and I was just doing what was best for that moment of survival. And there was remorse there for all of that. But like my husband said, I'm not going to live my life shackled to my past and continue to pay the sin for something that's been dealt with.
Right. Took everything I had not to bust out. I'm not a
Yeah.
perfect person.
Yeah.
I want to touch on boundaries because of what you're talking about right now and how important that is, because like we just said, it's not one thing. Relationships don't end over one thing.
Right.
It's always cumulative. Like it's a snowball. So if you have boundaries and you enforce your boundaries and people decide to step away from you because you're not a pushover, that's a choice that they've made. If people want to be in your life and you have established clear boundaries and you are going to uphold them and you're not going to tolerate certain aspects of things from them, they either have to adhere to your boundaries or they have to move away.
Right.
So you setting boundaries of the things that you want from the people in your life and people choosing whether or not they want to be here is a totally different thing than you just writing everyone off. That's the consequence of setting a boundary and then, having to enforce said boundary. I'm not going to tolerate this type of behavior. And that's all they do. You can be like, hey, I told you that I wasn't willing to accept this type of behavior. And I would love to be, you had to be in my life. But until I can see change behavior, I've got to keep you at a distance. I can't have you here.
Right.
That's what that looks like. And there's nothing fucking wrong with that. And anybody that tells you that you are different or how dare you, treat me like that or whatever the case may be, you have to understand that if you don't adhere to your boundaries and live by that set standard, no one else is going to either.
Right.
So it's important that you have discipline in your life and you live, and this is difficult because of everything we were just saying, but you live to your expectations of who you want to be. What you went through with the emotional cheating and what I went through with my affair, those things are the lesser of evils in our brain. We justified that behavior in the moment. Looking back on it with what we know now, there's a lot of different ways. And looking back, we can all go, yeah, you shouldn't do that. Everyone can say that.
Right.
But unless you're in those shoes and you're living in that moment, you don't know what's going on in that individual's mind. And I'm not justifying behavior. I'm saying that it's not black and white.
Right.
And until you understand somebody's gray area, you really shouldn't say shit.
Yeah. Tied in with the emotional cheating, I also felt like a sex object. I didn't feel valued as a person in that marriage.
Do you feel valued as a person now?
I do.
Okay.
I very much do.
Okay.
Yes. That's also not an excuse for my emotional cheating. There are multiple stepping stones for someone to get to that kind of breaking point.
Especially if you're naturally against those things.
Right. And vice versa. I was a yeller. I would throw things in his face. I would emasculate him. No wonder he cheated. I get it. In the moment, there was no justification for that. Still now, that's not justification. But I can see the reasoning of how someone got to the point that they were at.
Right. It's growth.
Yeah.
Because you're no longer a victim.
Right.
It's a big deal. This is the most in-depth we've gone with any of this shit.
Yeah.
I tried to be as forthcoming as I could at the beginning of the podcast so that everybody knew that I had a past doing what I had done, but I did not come as clean as I could have because there was other people involved who had not yet spoken up.
Right.
Those other people have spoken up with their thoughts and opinions and have made false statements.
Whatever they believe.
Where there's no proof to any of it. And I've let it go and let it go and let it go and let it go. And then yesterday somebody decided they wanted to jump on the internet and fucking start bashing us. And the council decided that it was okay for us to fucking speak on it.
Yeah, they were very emotional.
Fucking beside myself last night over it because I've been wanting to do this for 2 years now.
Yeah.
So I feel good about this. Like I feel light. I'm glad that this shit's off my chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have nothing to hide. And there's nothing that can be said or done to derail the progress that we're making in ourselves.
Right.
All of the people out there who are trying to drudge up years gone mistakes, you are nothing but gnats to us.
Right.
In the grand scheme of our life, I'm never going to think about you again.
Right. Could you imagine
No.
being so like wrapped up in your guilt and not growing that somebody could bring up something that you did 6 to 10 years ago and make you feel bad about it and make you question your sanity and your worth as a person and what value you bring and what you should or shouldn't be doing? We don't want to destroy people's lives or reputations.
Right.
Even if they're coming at us. Do whatever you got to do to make yourself feel good. I don't give a shit.
Right.
But taking shots at us to try to build your platform is a fucking problem.
Right.
And it's, I'm going to be very cautious about this because I'm not trying to throw shade and I don't want to give somebody a platform by speaking to them. This is like a rap battle, right?
Yeah.
Like we're Eminem and I don't know a famous woman rapper that's still relevant because I haven't listened to rap music. Like listen to
Missy
music.
Elliott.
Sure. Right? You're super duper fly.
Hey.
And you can't stand the rain, which is really weird, but okay. But we are on that level of superstardom in terms of what we have. And I don't even really think that we're even all of that.
Right.
But for young, upcoming content creators that don't have a following to try to bash us to make a name for themselves, you're only doing it because you're not important enough to talk about your own existence and the things that are going on in your growth and all of that.
Or you have nothing going for you.
Right. I have a problem with all of that. Stay in your fucking lane, but I'm not going to jump into a rap battle with you to make you get fame by addressing those things. So I'm not going to name anyone. I am going to say that, as stated earlier, when we decided to move forward with the Good Wives, I say we like I'm a part of that. I am a part of it behind the scenes, but we laid out all of the dirty laundry to Buff Bell. She got all of my dirt, all of your dirt, and in return, we got all of hers.
Yep.
And all the things that are being said that people are like, well, she did X, Y, Z.
We know.
We know.
And she knows.
Right. There's no secrets there because we decided to build a business. And if we were going into this shit with half truths, it would have destroyed what we were doing. So there's full transparency there.
Yeah.
The difference is the accountability in going, I did do all of that shit. My life was a fucking disaster and I'm working on it. Well, the podcast saved my life. Well, this happened. Well, that happened. Okay, cool. I'm glad that you were able to inform us of that. How long ago was it we had those conversations? Because if this was yesterday, it's a very different conversation than it was if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, right? And the people who want to jump on to their live streams or jump on to creating their own podcast or create TikToks or whatever the case may be, if you guys had enough growth in your own life and you were worried about your relationships and what's going on in your households and your personal development growth journey, you would have a whole lot more to talk about than what other people are doing. And until you have that, all you're doing is making yourself look bad. There are people out there who want the drama and they want the tea and they love the dumpster fires. And if that's who you're catering to, I'm sure that you'll find somebody else to latch onto when this airs, because at this point you have no ammunition now because we've just aired all the dirty laundry. I'm not even fucking sorry for it. Like I did the shit.
Yeah.
It's in the past. I can't change it. Hindsight 2020. I wish that I could have had a conversation with 18-year-old me to prepare him the way that I should have been prepared as a child, but that didn't fucking happen.
Yeah.
Can't change the past. Do I wish that I would not have infected other people's lives with my drama? Absolutely. But I did that shit. And I've had to live with the guilt and the shame and the judgment and all of that internally for so long now that I have worked through those emotions and I'm okay with me. And there's nothing that you're going to say or do that's going to make me regress being back to that hurt, broken individual because I love this new me. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for those things.
Yep.
There's not shame there. So you guys can save all that shit.
Yeah.
And I think that you and Buff Bell have a great thing going. Regardless of how broken both of you have been in your past and how fucked up your lives have been, you're helping people to avoid the situations that you had to suffer through. Isn't that that's the point, right?
That's the point.
Absolutely crazy to me. Let him without stone or sin cast the first stone. Isn't that what he said? I could absolutely bash your fucking head in with this rock. But I've been there.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you're hurting right now. I'm going to set this down because you too are flawed and broken. I hope that you can work through that one day. I hope you have a great life. And you walk the fuck away.
Yep.
Jenna said, I don't care about the mud you walk through to get here. Let's wash those feet and get you cleaned up. Yep. That's it. I am not I would not be ashamed to wash people's feet. I don't think that it would humiliate me or humble me at all.
I agree with that. I feel the same way.
This has been years in the making and years still.
I'm so over it.
Yeah. Well, could you imagine if this was going on 4 years from now? Because at this point, the things that I did is 6, 7, 8, 10 years old. Like,
right.
This is a whole lifetime for some people.
Yeah, this is almost a decade old for me.
Yeah. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.